Hey guys, welcome back to Solve Critiques, and this month I'm going to be changing how Solve Critiques work on Patreon. Doing all those written critiques was becoming too much work for me, and people generally don't make drastic improvements over 1 month, so now it's just going to be every 2 months, but you still get all the other perks of being a patron. But if you just want to watch the video critiques, then everything's going to be the same, still one a month. Alright, let's get started. In the first solve, you had a pretty easy cross. Blue is done, and green is in the wrong spot, but you replaced it with orange, and then red is here. So what you did was D prime and then put orange in, and then put this back, and then lastly red. If you can consistently come up with crosses that are efficient, then it's time to come up with good finger tricks for them as well. In this case, F and D moves use a lot of thumb, but if you face red instead, then it becomes completely R and D moves, which is really good. So this cross fast would look like this. For first F12 pair, you did these two, so pretty straightforward. And then red and blue. What you did here first was match them up, and I think you may have recognized from the way the colors match up. I'm not sure if that's what you did, but if you still recognize from matching the colors, make sure you can do it from here as well, and just by looking at the edge compared to the center and where the slot should go. In this case, it's next to the slot it should go, and the color is misoriented, so that's how I would recognize this. From here, you notice that it's a mismatch, and you did this way of pairing it, and then inserted it into the back. That way of pairing is really good for if it's in the opposite slot or in the solve spot. But if it's in one of the two that are adjacent to where it should go, then you should do a sledgehammer like this instead. That pairs them up to insert without rotating. Next you had this and this. Using the same idea from before, you should be able to recognize without putting it over here, which is what you did. So make sure you're not using color matching here anymore, and you're just looking at the edge compared to its surroundings. But the way you paired them up was good, like this, and then insert here. And lastly, for this pair, you ended up doing 2 rotations, and often if you do 2, you can also do 0. So in this case, what you did was pair them up like this, which is the beginner F2L way, and then insert. Instead, put it here and insert the edge, and then do this F2L case, and that's much faster. Then for OLL, you did this, which is good finger tricks, no regrips. And then here for PLL, U2 into this PLL. It's good that you didn't look at the back, which is a bad habit a lot of people have. And what you just did was U moves in order to align things and help you recognize. You still had a pause here though, and something to pay attention to is recognizing from things that are not the blocks. If you just tried to recognize from the blocks in any color matching here, it's kind of hard to tell. This could be a G perm, any G perm. It could also be a Y perm. But how I know which G perm it is from here is this is opposite and these two match. And how I know it's a G perm from this side is that if you ignore one of the colors, they're all opposite from each other. And this only happens for this G perm. And then the G perm algorithm. For this solve, the cross is a little harder. We have these cross pieces, and what you did was red, blue, and green together, and then dealt with orange last. So how you did this was by recognizing that red and blue can set up together like this, so that they go in red and blue like that. But then before that, what you also did was D prime. That sets up a green to also go in all together like that. Right here you paused a bit, maybe you didn't have it perfectly planned how you would do orange. What you did was you rotated and then D prime, R prime. And you shouldn't rotate during the cross, so here's how you could have done it instead. Since your hand was already like this, a B move is fine since your ring finger is perfectly set up for that. So what you could do here is a D prime, which you cannot use your right hand for because it needs to stay set up here, so you would do D prime with your left hand. And then B prime like this, puts in orange. Instead from here you also could have done U wide prime, and that puts it over here, then L prime. After the cross, you had this ready to go, and you rotated this way to insert into the front. This is something that you're okay with, and I see you do it sometimes, which is inserting into back slots whenever you have to rotate. You didn't do it here, but in general, just make sure that you try to do it as much as possible, as it makes look ahead easier. Next was this pair. I think you had some trouble recognizing it, so instead of going straight into this as a back slot, what you did was you rotated, did this, and then rotate it again to insert this. But this time you ended up choosing back slot, which is good. Good habit in general. In this case, it doesn't make a difference. You're still one slot unsolved in the front. Next is this, and you did it the normal way, but just using this slot to help. So you did this, and then inserted it into the back. And what's really good here is you did R prime U to R. A lot of people by habit here would do U, R prime U, R with a regrip. And it's really important that as much as possible, if it doesn't add extra moves, to do it this way instead, as it doesn't have a regrip. And next is this case, but something that you did here and for the previous case, and just what you often do is you tend to put the corner near the front, maybe just as a habit of recognition, but you should always try to recognize the case before you do too many U moves, because in this case it was redundant. As you progress to better look ahead, this will get easier, but just make sure you try to find out what case it is before you do any key rotations or any extra U moves. Extra U moves can be acceptable if it's in a case where it helps you find something and it's something you could not have found otherwise. For example, if it was like this, you can still see the corner, but the edge is not really seeable. Since his last slot, you can actually tell green must be over here, and that can help. But if it was first, second, or third slot, then you may not know that that's the correct edge, and U prime would be fine. This is a lot to think about in fast solves, so it's something you want to think about more in slow solves, where you try to get rid of bad habits and try to see exactly what case it is by doing as few U moves as possible. So then insert this, and then this OLL. Here you regripped. You can do it without a regrip. And then A perm. For this solve, you notice that orange and blue can be done easily at the end here, and they affect green, so you did green earlier and red earlier because red is not in a good spot. So you did D, F, L to solve these two, and then just solve these. So put in orange, then put in blue, and D2. In my critiques, I don't feel like I say this often, but that was a great cross solution, so let's move on. Next, you did red-green, and the way you did it was L prime U to L, which also paired up blue and red. So you inserted these backslot, good, and then these backslot as well, very good. Next, you had this one and this one, so like this. And then here you did 2 rotations for this case. If you get it from here, you need a way to do it rotationless, and there are a few ways. So the way that you did it was rotate and then do this to pair them up, and then rotate again to insert it. There are a few rotationless ways to do it, and one of them is like this, by moving it over here and then doing sledgehammer on the slot, and that sets up this. One problem with that solution that also happened with yours is you get a dot OLL, and how you recognize that is one edge only attached to where this pair is, forming like a square. And if that happens, you don't want to choose either of these 2 ways, so I'll show you some of the other ones. Another really fast solution is this algorithm, and you can start the M move either with 2 moves like this, or with M like this, or with your ring finger. So this algorithm would look like this. You could also do it with LU moves, but this is better saved for if the cross was already solved on top. And just to round this out, if you're facing this side and you wanted to do it this way, but gave you a dot case, then instead you can do this. And that pairs them up without breaking up this. This last solve for the most part was actually really good, so I'll just go over it quickly. So what you did here was green is in the right spot, but orange is here and blue and red here are set up. So what you did was move orange here so it's solved relative to green, then do these 2 together, and then align the cross. Next is this pair. I feel like you got that pair a lot. Next is this one, you inserted it into a front slot, which is actually okay. If you get diagonal slots, it doesn't really matter which way you're facing. So then this one you should have inserted it into a back slot, but you did front slot. That's pretty much the only problem with the solve. And then lastly, this one, easy to see. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So that last solve, super straightforward. So I think overall your solves are pretty solid. It's just a few little things that you could work on. Specifically in F2L, don't move the top corner around to match it up with the edge in order to help you recognize. You should recognize from just the location of the edge and its orientation relative to the side centers. And so for example, if you knew it was orange-green, you just saw it from here, that should be enough to tell you you're supposed to do this. This is the type of thing where like extra U moves, really hard to think about removing that during fast solves. So if you're ever trying to get rid of a bad habit, that is when slow solves are really useful because you have time to think about what's the right thing to do. And if you're making the cross, this is just a simple example. Make sure you always pick a side to face that gives you the best finger tricks. In this case, if you're solving this, the best side to face would either be green or blue, as you can do it like that, or you could do it like this. A lot of people would face orange because like that, but you end up in a terrible grip, so that's actually not good. And since you're already really solid, especially in a lot of things like finger tricks and your turn speed is not bad, then I would say just try to develop a new thing that you can be strong at. Obviously, look ahead is always very important, and I have videos on those. Some other things you can work on, like I noticed that one OLL that you regrip like this, you could change it to be without a regrip. So just optimizing and speeding up your OLLs and PLLs. So that's pretty much it. Very solid solves, and anytime you think you don't have bad habits, or at least not big ones that you need to fix right away, then it's good to develop a new strength and start working on new things and optimizing what you know. So that's it for this critique. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.